Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Rotary meeting for Monday, April the 11th. And I will now call upon Malcolm to introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you, Don. Our speaker today is Mystery Furtado, a health and wellness advocate, an RN, and an entrepreneur. In 2021, she was named one of Business London's magazine's 20 in their 20s. She created Granny P's wellness products, as well as the social enterprise, Type Diabeat It, a Canadian nonprofit that focuses on helping individuals make the necessary lifestyle changes required to fight diabetes that disproportionately affect minority communities, such as within Canada and in Belize. And that's not all. A new community garden in London is helping people that wouldn't otherwise have access to fresh vegetables. The Black People of Color Community Garden is providing fresh vegetables for 10 families who've worked hard all summer on a plot of land behind the London Food Bank on Lithorn Street. Glenn Pearson, the co-executive of the London Food Bank, says this type of work is in our mandate. Please welcome Mystery Furtado.
Good morning, and thank you guys for having me. I'm the CEO and founder of Type Diabeat It. So as Malcolm rightly mentioned, we are a Canadian non-for-profit, and we basically support marginalized and low-income families who are suffering from diabetes. We know that diabetes disproportionately affects people of color, also those with low income. So our whole mandate is to ensure that they're equipped with the right education and resources to lead a healthier lifestyle. So our vision is a life free from the stigma that diabetes causes to the BPOC community. Our mission is to ensure that every man, woman, and child within the community understand what living with diabetes is, especially through education and supported by what is called healthy eating or cultural nutrition, because life is worth living once you free yourself from those barriers. So our why. First of all, diabetes is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. I have lost both my maternal and paternal grandparents to type 2 diabetes. At the age of 8, I was administering insulin to my grandmother. I'm not sure why I was doing that, because I have an 8-year-old son, and I could never see him having the courage to try to inject me with a needle. But at the time in Belize, we lived in a remote area, and the nearest hospital was about an hour away. And the primary caregiver was my aunt. But my aunt quickly went back to school to learn English, and I was left at home a lot with my grandmother. And one day, her sugar levels was really, really low, and she needed a shot of insulin. And I was brave enough and I gave it to her. When my parents came home, they were shocked out of their minds, asking me, why did I do that? But I basically saved my grandmother's life. And ever since then, I kept on, administering insulin to her. So apart from doing it at a very early age, as I got older, I realized how it really affected my family. So when I migrated to London, my primary goal was to solely provide relief support for diabetics in Belize, because diabetes is the top 3 cause of death. Now, all the work that I did in Belize, I modeled it off of the Canadian healthcare system, the Canadian Diabetes Guide. But as I did my paperwork to become a registered nurse, and I was working as a clinical educator at St. Thomas Hospital, I realized that there was so much work for me to do in my very own backyard. While in Belizean context, you're looking mostly at resources from a financial level and education. When we talk about diabetes in Canada, there is resources, but it lacks cultural competency. It lacks representation. So the Diabetes Charter for Canada, published in 2018, is actually calling on the government to support more culturally based initiative, because we now have to look at culture as a social determinant of health. So more than race, more than financial background, educational level, but also really focusing on how does culture play into your access of care, into your perception of your disease or perception of health, and your commitment to follow that regime. So having that said, I then went back to the R board and we did a lot of research to realize that in Canada, the top communities that are severely affected are natives and the Black community. So looking at the African diaspora, so it looks at Latin America, Central America, and of course the Caribbean and Africa. Those populations are at 8.4% self-diagnostic rates of diabetes in comparison to individuals of Caucasian descent, was only at 4.2%, which means that these ethnicities are at 6.4% higher, without even looking at any of the social determinants of health, just looking at race demographic, the statistics. So having done the research, being in the hospital settings, we decided that we want to take on two-part mission to support diabetics in London at first, and then the idea would be to grow countrywide to be able to support all of Canada while looking at cultural competent care. So our pillars are health, wellness, and civic engagement. Health and wellness go really well together because we're not only speaking about having diabetes or in the state of being sick. Health and wellness looks at a holistic aspect. So the spiritual components, jobs, education, looking at the person as an individual, and how do we as an organization continue to engage the community and continue to advocate for the community. So not just being diabetic, but also pre-diabetic or being predisposed to diabetes because of your genes. So our goal is to ensure that Type Diabeat It becomes the first BPOC referral center for culturally appropriate diabetes care. We envision our center will serve as a place to find friendship, support, knowledge, and help. So our team, very quickly, myself, the founder and the CEO. We have our chair. Her name is Bukun. She's a graduate of Western Ontario, and she holds a master's degree in social psychology. We have our vice chair, graduate of Fanshawe College. She studied medical laboratory. We have our secretary, who's a local entrepreneur in London. Her name is Kalisha Dance. We have Mr. John Prochetto, who's our treasurer, longtime financial advisor. I'm one of the first families that I met when I first migrated to London. We have our advisor, her name is Sedat. Some of you may be familiar with her as she is a community activist and she does a lot of programs with high school and children. We have Dr. Jean Isabel. She mostly sits on our work in Belize. She's from Illinois University, and her role specifically is to offer free HbA1c testings to Belizeans, as most persons cannot afford that level of tests. But we're lucky in Canada, and HbA1c testing is covered once or twice a year by the healthcare system, especially if you're diabetic. And very quickly, the HbA1c testing is a blood test. It can be done by a finger prick or by actually extracting blood from your body, and it looks at the glucose level within the red blood cell. So how does your red blood cell last for up to 3 months in your body? So it's a test that you cannot cheat, because we're not looking at an 8-hour, we're looking at 3 months, your glucose level in your body. We have Jenna Goodhand, also a local entrepreneur and community activist in London, Ontario. So a few of our community partners, we have the very gracious and supportive London Food Bank. We're now working with the Western Fair for the Greenhouse Project. Glencairn Community Center allows us a space to pack our food boxes. And the London Inter-Community Health Center, we work with them to source diabetes nurses and nutritionists for our either in-person or virtual seminars. So our programs, as Malcolm mentioned, we established the first Black community garden in Southwestern Ontario because we realized that access to quality produce is something that many families struggle to attain. When we look at culture, it just so happens that other marginalized groups have an even harder time in accessing fresher produce. So we came together with the London Food Bank, and we had kids, adults, youths working a plot of land and being able to plant, harvest, reap, and take the produce home. Because if you work as a community and your child or someone you know is active in planting this food, you yourself would be more engaged or more willing to want to eat this produce because you were involved in that process. So here is just one of the pictures that we had. And we were, if you look at our social media channels, you would see how much fun we had creating this garden. Well, to move up from that project, we're now working on a greenhouse project in collaboration with the Food Bank and the Western Fair. So we won, or we participated in the London neighborhood decision making, whereby residents are to vote on an idea, and our idea placed second. So we were awarded $20,000 towards getting all the greenhouse material, getting the greenhouse set up, everything necessary to, in terms of equipment and material, to make this project a reality. And again, we will be supporting marginalized and low income families because 13.3% of all Ontarians suffer some level of food insecurity. So it's not about being marginalized, it's not about being a person of color. This is an issue that affects all Ontarians. 13.3% is actually a very high number for us to be, experiencing, as a country. And if we speak about children ages 12 to 16 years of age, they are at higher risk of not consuming the right amount of fruits and vegetables. So this greenhouse project is a community project that will be able to support the entire central community to ensure that they have more access to quality produce, in the hope that we are going to lower rates of diabetes by looking at nutrition for those who are highly predisposed, addressing food security, because the pandemic has shown that, how much impact not being able to socialize, not being able to have good self-esteem, all those things play a role, especially with nutrition, in the overall perception and how you feel about health. So we're really excited about this project, and we're approaching spring, and we cannot wait to be able to start prepping the ground, getting set up, plant our seedlings. And we also plan to run programs for our children and youths to be able to come in and take home bags of plants so that they can practice. Even if they don't have a garden space per se, they can have these bags of plants rejuvenating at home. So we also do what is called the Healthy Portion Seminar. So it's another food literacy program, but really focusing on culture. So looking at the Afro-Heritage food pyramid, explaining to the community, and to those who are not in the community, to understand that our foods have been altered by slavery and westernization. The fact that during the slave trade, a lot of the foods that we were given were not actually a way of how we ate. It was what was given to us as slave masters gave us the rejects of the food. So you find that our community consumes a high number of carbs, so a lot of rice, a lot of meat. And we think that it's cultural, but not really. It had to do with the influence of, slavery. And then if we look at westernization with rice, many of us in the African diaspora, so that is Central America, South America, parts of the States, and even in North America, rice was something that was brought to us. So there's only very few places in Africa that actually made rice. Rice was brought to us when, Spain and England went around conquering other smaller countries, and they brought rice. So if you do history into the Dominican, into Belize, into Guatemala, some places in Cuba, rice is something that started to be cultivated in recent years. It wasn't really a food natural to where to the continent. So having those conversations is a very huge empowerment piece to understand why you eat the way you do and how can you make tiny changes to improve your overall nutrition. So along with that program, we provided 80 food boxes once a month for families to be able to go home and cook a meal that is basically all greens. These boxes are ethnocultural because they have no rice, they have no meat. So the idea is that if you're able to sit the seminar, we support you for 4 to 5 months. You get a grocery box. You take it home and you're able to replicate that meal. You have a recipe with all the ingredients inside of it. And the idea is to get you thinking about other food alternatives, because change doesn't happen overnight. So it's tiny steps that empower them to want to make the changes. We also had our cooking classes, whereby we took on health from a community perspective, which is rooted in culture. And we came together and we cooked at the Innovations Works building. And we basically made the recipes that are being sent home. We were uploading videos to our YouTube platform, but because we are solely volunteer based, we haven't been able to upload because of skill capacity and all the things that come along with trying to upload a video. So the YouTube channel is not as active as I want it to be, but hopefully as we grow and we're able to secure, paid positions, we can continue this initiative of cooking these recipes and having it available as a resource. Last year, we also did a healthy snacks program because we assessed that kids in a local soccer club, this club looked at supporting children and youths who are unable to afford extracurricular sports. Again, another issue that also affects Ontarians on a whole. I don't have the statistics at this time, but many families struggle to afford extracurricular sports. So this club looked at, ending those barriers that prevented them. And we realized that many of these kids never ever had a cherry tomato. And I know many of us on this call would be very surprised by that. But having kids walk up to you and be like, I've never had this, and they're 10 or they're 15, you realize what a simple cherry tomato, a simple strawberry goes a very long way. Because if you're looking at a home that has multiple kids or a low income home, they're not going to be able to go out and always buy fresh produce. They're going to buy food that keeps the kids fuller for longer or something cheaper. So this program, we had so much fun running it, and we had about 80 to 100 kids twice a week that we provided healthier snack options to. We also had our 5K run. This year is going to be our third year. We do it at the Springback Park. And the idea is to raise awareness, raise funds to support our initiatives, and bring out the community. We did a group exercise. We did fruit kebabs. And it was a really nice event that involved all ages, and we all came out, did our 5 kilometers. So I'm really excited about this project again for this year, as again, we're volunteer based. We're only going to be having 2 projects. One is, which is the greenhouse, and the second is going to be our 5K run. We did a quick fundraiser, a London Recreational Outdoor Soccer League last year, again, to raise funds, create more meaningful opportunities for those in the community to afford to congregate and to play, because a big part of diabetes is also exercise. So the MVP for this game was a 65-year-old male who was the best goalkeeper in the entire league. So I had so much fun collaborating on this initiative, because you got to see, all, ages come out, families come out to support, and just create a safe environment for those who feel comfortable. We also did a backpack program last year. So I worked with a local church, and they donated the backpacks, and we gave it out to 100 kids in the community, because we realized that these kids didn't have the means to always afford back to school supplies. So many of them were already in September, didn't have backpacks, didn't have the basic needs. So luckily this project came together really, really well. I'm not sure if we're going to be running it this year, just because I don't want to stretch myself too thin. We did so much last year, and while it was impactful, we need to regroup and strategize to make sure it's sustainable to continue as we grow as an organization. Right now, our volunteer partnerships involve Fanshawe College. I have a placement social work student on board with us. Brusha, we have an entire class looking at resources for the greenhouse. So we're going to have an actual manual that's going to have cooking instructions, planting instruction, nutritional facts, and they also help to build some capacity within the organization. So reviewing a couple of our presentations, adding more research to it, just helping us overall. And we also have a Conestoga group, university students working at revising and improving our business plan. So a lot of what I do has to do with the values and morals instilled to me by my grandmother. And something she always told me is a famous quote, is that if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for one day. But if you teach him how to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. So a lot of what we're doing is, empowering and educating our community, because health equity starts with access. Any questions?
I'm wondering if the City of London does anything in the way of making allotments or community gardens available for folks, or is it all done by a local initiative of a group of people approaching a landowner and say, can we have this spot in your backyard?
So the City of London has a community garden process, but from my knowledge, it's very tedious, a little bit complicated. I initially started out trying to work with the City of London to acquire land, because they do have plots of land available. For whatever reason, it never materialized, and the food bank jumped right in, and that was how we were able to have the community garden. Similarly with the greenhouse, my original plan was for Silverwoods Arena, because that arena is becoming expired, or has already been expired, the ice rink, and they have a huge plot of land, a soccer field, and what better way to revitalize the east side of town, which lacks in many things, as many cities. The east side is never as nice as the north side. So if you look at that area, putting a greenhouse there would be really impacting for all the residents, be a form of beautification and a form of, community engagement, and also a center for health. When I spoke to the city about about Silverwoods Arena, a lot of obstacles and rules came into play. I am still hoping to be a part of the conversation for the arena, but putting up a greenhouse wouldn't have been within city laws or rules. So I guess that's my long and short answer to the city, but there is plots of land available by, the City of London.
John, you have a question. Malcolm, you have a question.
Yes, I understand that Rotary London South has assisted with the greenhouse project. Is that correct?
Yes, and I apologize. I did a presentation.
No, it's okay.
I did a presentation for them similarly, and from my understanding, they are making a contribution, I believe, of $3,000 towards the project. A part of that funds will go to actually purchasing the greenhouse, and then the other half I'll be able to use, because I would like to secure bus passes for families who might not be able to access the greenhouse, in terms to ensure that they are able to further, have access, and probably, hopefully, provide some compensation to high school and university students, so I can have committed volunteers, because one of the struggles as a smaller entity is securing committed volunteers. And since there is no paid roles, if someone doesn't show up, that can severely impact the output of the project. So I'm not in a position, because I've applied for a couple other grants with United Way, which sadly was denied. But I'm still going to keep applying, because if I can receive some funding to cover, like a little summer job or remuneration for their work, it would ease my mind a lot, because I've been doing this for a little while, and volunteer work is great, but sometimes it needs to be more. So that's what I'm hoping I'll be able to do by the time we're ready to start.
Okay, good. Thank you. Appreciate that.
And Rashad, you have a question.
Kade, thanks for your presentation. It seems like you already have one greenhouse established, and now you're looking to fundraise for a second one. Or are we talking about the existing one and you wanted to support it further?
No, so I had a community garden, and now we have a greenhouse project.
Got it.
So it's the one greenhouse. I know there's a picture of me with a
You
greenhouse,
add a
but that's the
greenhouse,
food,
yes.
that's the food bank's greenhouse.
Got it.
That's not
Okay.
ours. Ours is planned or scheduled to be on the Western Fairgrounds. But the
All right,
Furtado
yeah.
Food Bank is supporting us with, providing the greenhouse for that space.
Got it. Okay. I grew cannabis in Oregon, which utilized a lot of greenhouses. So if you need assistance, you're welcome to reach out. I have suppliers as well.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? If not, I would like to thank you, Mr. It was, one of my Rotary jobs is working with international students and thinking
Okay.
through cross-cultural activities and the impact of culture on things. But today was the first time that I actually was able to think about disease from a cultural perspective. And it makes a lot of sense once it's explained to you, but I'd never thought about it before that, yes, there is a cultural component to disease. And it is very interesting as to how that actually impacts people and the incidence of disease in certain populations. So the Rotary Club of London, in recognition of your presentation today, has made a contribution to the Polio Plus campaign of the Rotary Foundation to immunize 50 infants against polio. So because of you, Rotary is now one step closer to a polio-free world. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much for having me.
And we will now continue with some club announcements. I think the first one that we have is the Rotary Ranch Party. So we are still looking for people to buy tickets. There has not been many ticket sales in our club yet. We are not going to send out the goon squad to make you buy tickets, but we are going to encourage people to buy tickets for the Rotary Ranch Party. Or if you are not wanting to attend the Rotary Ranch Party, there are other ways to support the Rotary Ranch Party. We are looking for sponsors. We are looking for items for the silent auction. We are looking for volunteers for the night of the event. So there's lots of opportunities to support the Rotary Ranch Party coming up on May 6th. That's the Friday night before Mother's Day. And this is one of the two big fundraisers for our club in the year. We haven't been able to do it for 2 years, but it would be nice to be able to do it this year and raise some more funds for club projects. Jim or anyone, have I missed anything about the Rotary Ranch Party? The next announcement is the Earth Day Park cleanup that the Satellite Club is organizing. It is on Earth Day, of course, on April 23rd. There are 2 parks involved, Cavendish Park near Warncliffe and Riverside and Lauren Ave Park. The Satellite Club is asking people to sign up because the parks aren't that big, and they're hoping to get 10 people per park, and that should allow the park cleanup to be taken care of in about 2 hours at each park. Gloves will be provided, garbage bags will be provided. All of that is being taken care of by the Satellite Club. They just want enthusiastic volunteers to come out, but beforehand, please sign up using the link in the cog. Just some reminders about upcoming Rotary meetings and events. Next weekend is Easter, so we will not have a meeting on Monday. Our next Rotary meeting will be Monday, April 25th, with Peter Rosalick from Mission Services of London speaking. The Satellite Club meeting, their second meeting of the month, will be on April 19th, and they'll be doing some club planning. Our board meeting is on Wednesday, April 20th. And of course, cocktail hour tomorrow, Tuesday at 5 p.m. and coffee clutch on Thursday at 10:30 a.m. And that is everything for our meeting this week. A reminder that we in Rotary serve to change lives, and I hope everyone has a great week. Thank you.